notary signing agent, on-site daily, no appointment needed, and they offer a full scale of printing services from shipping labels to documents, business cards, banners, photos, and business signage. They're your passport service headquarters. They offer passport photos, and they can renew your adult passports. If you're traveling in a hurry, they can get those passports to you within 7 days or less. Mailbox rentals with a physical street address, and they also receive your packages from Amazon, UPS, FedEx, USPS, and more. Here's the best part. If you're a Pushing the Limits listener, they have an introductory rate of only $39 for a 3-month service. You can't beat it. Give them a call, 702-873-8005. Check them out at 6130 West Flamingo Road. It's the Postal Annex. And tell them I sent you. Hey everybody, it's Brian Shapiro from Pushing the Limits, the fastest growing radio show in the Valley. And now we've expanded our reach to include live stream ads on social media with over 20,000 daily views. So are you ready to take your business to the next level? Then get in on the action. Our team will put together the right ad package for you that meets your business needs. So what are you waiting for? Send us an email, sales@ptlradioshow.com. That's sales@ptlradioshow.com. and reach your target audience while maximizing the advertising impact of your business. That email again, sales@ptlradioshow.com. That's sales@ptlradioshow.com. All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us. And gosh, I haven't had the opportunity to talk a lot of Raiders football and talk general and because there's world. But a guy I love to mix it up with, he is the co-creator of the Silver and Black podcast. It's a great podcast. My friend Scott Gulbransen joining us right now on the line to talk some football. Scotty, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Brian, what's going on, man? It's been too long. It's good to get back with you here. We get into the playoffs. Of course, the Raiders didn't make the playoffs, but lots going on.
Yes, and of course, we'll talk about the national championship game as well. But let's start with the Raiders. Okay, so the big question, is Coach Pierce going to be Coach Pierce next year? I want to give you my brief opinion, and then I want you to take the floor. I think Pierce has done a good job. Players like him. He seems to be a likable guy. He's honest. He has all the characteristics socially that Josh McDaniels didn't have. He's personable. He's good with the media. And yes, he did have a winning record. But if you have an opportunity to get a Jim Harbaugh, you take that opportunity. I don't care what the players think. You get Harbaugh. With that being said, if you want to give Pierce an opportunity, and if you can't get a big name like a Harbaugh, then give him a 2-year contract and let's see what he can do. I don't have a problem with that. But I think people are overreacting to some of these games, and they're celebrating in the locker room after beating a mediocre to below average Denver Broncos team and the smoking of these cigars. Okay, congratulations. You were a little above 500. Most of these games were meaningless football games. I just think it's an overreaction, and it's a little bit embarrassing. Where am I wrong?
Well, let's start with the coaching situation, and I agree with you 100% there. Listen, if you can get Jim Harbaugh, if you're in on him, you have to try that, right? And I don't think Mark Davis, no matter how much he appreciates, and I know this will be breaking news for everybody, but I want everybody to know, because I appreciate the fans of Raider Nation are the best there are, okay? But I just want them to know they're not going to hire a coach because you tell them to, okay?
Right.
So Mark Davis has to do what he's got to do. So if Jim Harbaugh is on the table, which it appears that he is, not that other teams don't want to talk to him too, by the way, so it's not like you're the only person that wants to do it, then absolutely you have to go at him because he has a winning pedigree. He's done it. He has the network, by the way, of coaches. People forget this. You can hire Antonio Pierce, and everybody's saying, you just get him a good offensive coordinator. Getting those people to come work with Antonio Pierce will be harder than it will be for Jim Harbaugh. Not because Antonio Pierce can't be a good head coach or because he's not a good guy. He doesn't have the same gravitas or the pedigree that Jim Harbaugh has. So when you hire a coach like Harbaugh, you get that with it. If you go the Pierce direction, and I really do think, Brian, I really do, core belief that it is the only two, that's the only two people right now. They will interview others because they have to, but I will tell you, I think that's the two choices here. If they don't get Harbaugh, I'm with you. Give him a short-term contract, but I don't know. The risk associated with that, again, goes back to who can he bring in, who can run the offense. Do you want to trust the Raiders have to go get a franchise quarterback? Do you want to trust Antonio Pierce and whoever they hire to develop that quarterback? That's going to be the question. I don't answer it. Mark Davis answers it, but there is high risk there to be certain.
Reports are out there, breaking news, that the Giants are looking to hire Pierce as their defensive coordinator. So Pierce seems to be in a pretty good position right now. If he doesn't get the head coaching job here, it looks like the Giants will go after him, and he certainly raised his stock. I certainly wouldn't doubt that. But it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth when you have, listen, I love Max Crosby. These guys are passionate football players. Devontae Adams, these guys want to win, man. I appreciate that about them. And when they win, they should celebrate. But come on, man. You're beating teams that are under 500 and you're smoking cigars. Listen, that win on the road against the Chiefs, big win. Even though it didn't really matter in the playoff scheme, certainly not for the Raiders, it's a big win. You win on the road, you beat, the Chiefs. That's a big deal. But come on, man. You're smoking cigars in the locker room, beating some of these teams that are average to below average football teams. I just think it's a really bad look. Am I wrong?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with you on that. I see your point of view, though, right? Because you could look at that and say, listen, act like you've been there before. But I think, too, how when you've heard of the Stockholm Syndrome, somebody gets kidnapped and then they start to sympathize with their kidnappers. The other side of that is, and I forgot what it's called, so excuse me, but when people's lives are saved by people, whether it's a first responder, a lot of times those people end up developing romantic relationships and great friendships because you rescued them. They're so appreciative. They find this bond. I think that's where the Raiders are with Antonio Pierce. Josh McDaniels was such a doofus that when Antonio Pierce came in, he was the knight in shining armor for these guys. And I think that's what you're seeing. But to your point, is that the mentality going forward? Because guess what? When you get into the offseason, then you get into OTAs and you get into training camp, it's no longer him rescuing you and he's coming in and doing that. He's got to win, and he's got to do it at a higher clip than he was able to do with the team he inherited.
All right. That leads me to my next question, Gully. What do you think is going to happen here? Here's what I think is going to happen. I think Mark Davis is going to announce soon that Pierce will be the head coach. I believe that he, in the back of his mind, what happened with Bisaccia and that coaching situation, he knows he made a grave mistake there, and even a bigger mistake hiring Josh McDaniels. I believe he does not want to make the same mistake. It's going to be an overreaction. He's going to cave into the players. And I believe Pierce will be announced as the official head coach. That's what, and by the way, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that decision, but I think that's what Mark Davis is going to do. What say you?
I think it's a good assumption based on what I've heard, and I've only been around Mark Davis a handful of times in a very personal situation, but from what I hear, he's a guy that's got feelings and he's into that, and he wants to know Raider Nation loves him and all that. So I could see it going that way, but I would back up just a little bit and say it was not a mistake not to hire Rich Bisaccia. Ask and tell me though, Brian, how many teams interviewed Rich Bisaccia for their head coaching job since? Mm-hmm.
So none. Zero. And Chris
and not only that, but wait a minute, he brought them to the playoffs. So Antonio Pierce, again, I want people to get this straight. I'm not in any way degrading Antonio Pierce for the job he did, because he did a great job. But let's put it into context. Context is so important. Fans think emotionally, so they don't always put things into context to your original statement about what Pierce has done and the smoking in the locker room and all that kind of stuff. So I think we just need to consider that. I'm not disagreeing with you that that's the way it might go, but I will give you, since you're a guy who's talked about gambling and played cards, the tell will be, do the Raiders hire Champ Kelly as their GM first? Now, Champ Kelly's interviewing for other jobs. If they do, that will be the tell that Antonio Pierce will be the coach. If they don't, then to me, that means that they're seriously in discussions with Harbaugh. Probably.
Yeah. If you're not going to hire Pierce, you got to hire a big name, and Jim Harbaugh is absolutely that. I will say this, though. I do think, and I understand Bisaccia has not been hired as a head coach. I get that. But I feel like what he did in that year of turmoil with the whole John Gruden situation, winning a lot of football teams, the team got better, getting them to the playoffs, almost beating the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that made it to the Super Bowl that year. I can't speak for other teams. Maybe they know something that I don't. Very possible. But those players would have gone through a brick wall for that coach. And I absolutely believe that it was a mistake. Obviously, we all agree it was a mistake to hire Josh McDaniels. What a doozy of a hire that was. But I just believe you have to give Ole and that staff 1 year. They should have come back for 1 year. They don't make it to the playoffs the next year. Okay, then you move on. I think it was a mistake. So I guess we could agree to disagree on that. But
Sure.
I think we both agree if you're not going to keep Pierce, which I'm totally fine with that, because I still think he's kind of unproven as a head coach, then you got to hire a big name. It's got to be a slam dunk deal.
Yeah, and I think that's why and I've gone back and forth with a lot of fans on this, and that's why Harbaugh. Look, nothing is guaranteed. Nobody is guaranteed to come in and win. Okay, it's not going to happen. But I will say, if you look at Harbaugh's record, this isn't some offensive coordinator who's getting bumped up to head coach.
Right.
This is somebody, and it's not Josh McDaniels who has 6 Super Bowl rings as a coordinator. This is a guy who took the 49ers from 6-10 in 2010 to an NFC championship game the next year, was the NFL coach of the year, went to 3 straight NFC championship games. Yes, he didn't win a Super Bowl. I get it. But he won an NFC championship. Then he goes to Michigan and he wins a national championship. So you can't look at his record and say, this guy's unproven. No, he's won every place he's been.
No question about that. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Speaking of which, let's talk a little bit. If you're just joining us, Scott Gulbransen's co-creator of the Silver and Black Today podcast. We're talking some Raiders football, but I would have to speak to, of course, the national championship game yesterday, which I thought was kind of an ugly football game yesterday.
It was.
It wasn't a very well played game. It was kind of ugly, but Michigan, they seem to always do what it takes to win. And at the same time, you have obviously the starting QB on the other side who was hurt in the second half. I just felt like he was never comfortable. UW's offense never looked very good, and you have to give a lot of credit, of course, to the Michigan defense as well. On the same token, the defense on the other side of the ball on UW, I mean, they made plenty of stops in the second half. They had every opportunity to come back and maybe win that football game. But I just thought it was kind of, you look at the 2 semifinal games, which were both extremely entertaining and great games. I felt like this game was a little bit of a disappointment and a letdown.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think that the one thing that I said going into the game, we were talking about it last week on Sportsnaut, was the fact that Michigan wanted that game. They wanted it to be ugly, right? Because that plays into their hands. And so they were, especially with the way JJ McCarthy's played down the stretch, he hasn't thrown the ball well. So they had to rely on the run. They had to rely on winning in the trenches. There was no way they could get into a shootout with Washington. And that said, that's what they did. Washington had chances early. Michigan scored obviously early, but then you remember Michigan scores in the early part of the second quarter and then doesn't score again until late in the third quarter. So you're right. Washington had all the opportunities there, and it was just one of those ugly games, not fun to watch unless you're a Michigan fan, even if there was no action. So to me, yeah, it was contrasting styles of teams, and going in, I kind of expected that, unless Washington could have really gotten just fired up and gone out on offense quickly and taken advantage of Michigan, and they just couldn't get that done.
Yeah, they couldn't. And again, you got to give the Michigan, the staff, a lot of credit, and obviously a lot of NFL talent on that football field. How do you see these 2 quarterbacks making it in the NFL? And if they do, how far do you think they can go?
Well, it's interesting. The Penix debate is interesting because during the semifinals, suddenly everybody's, oh, he's a top 5 pick. Then after last night, it's like, oh, he's a second or third round pick. Look, I think that the issue with Penix is if he's in the right system, he can be a good NFL quarterback. Yes, he's got the injury history. He's a little bit older. So what? But I still think, remember what public sentiment is at the moment does not matter to an NFL scout when they're sitting at the combine, interviewing the kid and giving him workouts. That's who's going to decide. So we'll see coming out of those where they peg him. I still think he's a bottom of the first round guy, maybe higher.
I agree.
And I think JJ McCarthy's got to go back to school. I don't see it. Especially after, let's face it, after the cheating scandal thing broke, he had 1 touchdown pass the rest of the year. So I'm not saying that they're correlated per se. It's just what happened. And so he's got to get better. And I don't see him going this year in this class, especially. I think he'd be pretty dumb to go out now because he's in a crowded field. Why not wait, develop your skills and become better?
100% agree with everything you said about both QBs. With that being said, I did want to mention this to you since, you follow UNLV football. Starting QB has now transferred to Georgia. I don't understand this situation at all. I don't know why he would do that. I don't understand what these kids are thinking. I don't want to try to get inside his head successful season at UNLV. Everybody loves him here. High school, went to Liberty High School, and now he's leaving. I just don't understand it. Don't get it.
Yeah, and I think it's a short-sighted money grab, to be honest with you, because I had somebody with knowledge at UNLV tell me that from an NIL perspective, they were able to offer him $50,000 next year, but he was looking for 300, and it's like 300,000 as a freshman quarterback. Now, look, he did a good job, but was he an SEC quarterback? I think he's going to Georgia. I don't know what he's getting there. We don't know until we start to see stuff pour out. But I don't see him playing there. I don't know.
He's going to be the third backup. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I agree with you. And I just think it's a foolish decision on his part. There would have been a lot of expectations, but he would have been obviously the starting QB. And now it's going to be Doug Brumfeld. It's got to be as a senior. And I think he'll be fine. But it's unfortunate.
It is. And it's the world we live in now. I think for the guys who can do it, I understand it and don't blame them for taking the bag when they can. But at the same time, there's all these guys too that are fringe or they're young and somebody's in their ear, and I think they make poor decisions. So he'll have to live with that though. But now he can transfer every year if he wants to. So we'll see what happens.
I was going to say, take that 50 grand, put it on red or black, but he's not 21 years old yet. So I would never condone somebody under the age of 21 to gamble. So I won't say that on the air. Oh, wait, I just did. Anyway, Scott Gulbransen, tell me a little bit about how people can follow you. I love your podcast. Tell me a little bit about that and how people can follow you, my friend.
Sure. We are Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. You can get us wherever you get your audio. Just look for Silver and Black Today and put on that auto download. And we do during the season 3 to 4 shows a week. And during the off season, we're down to about 2. But you can do that. You can also follow me on x.com at LVGully.
There's only a few people in all of the world that I listen to on the radio podcasts that cover Raiders football. Gully, you are one of them. The other is my friend JT the Brick. Those are the only 2 people that I listen to. And I'm lucky to call both of you my friends as well. So Gully, thank you so much for coming on. As always, keep up the great work, my friend. And whenever there's breaking news on the new official head coach, we'd love to have you on to talk about that. Appreciate you, Gully.
Sounds good, Brian. Appreciate you too. Take care now.
Have a good one. Scott Gulbransen, everybody. One of the good guys. Really good at what he does. And I appreciate him taking the time to join us, as I always do, by the way. Before we let you go today, there is a big UNLV basketball. Before I talk about the men's game today, somebody from the Review Journal wrote an article about how LaRock should be a rock star in Las Vegas. I'm not going to mention who wrote that article. I think anybody who knows me well probably knows who that person is. And I'll say this. There are people that cover UNLV hoops, women and men, that are not very good at their job. There are people who cover UNLV football in this town that are not very good at their job. If they had it their way, Arroyo would still be the head coach. How would that turned out? And they'll never admit they're wrong. And don't get me wrong, LaRock has done a phenomenal job. She's a nice person. She's done a phenomenal job. She's turned the women's program around. But let's be honest, folks. When I think of rock star in UNLV, it's Anderson Hunt. It's Larry Johnson. It's Jerry Tarkanian. It's Greg Anthony. And with all due respect to women's basketball, I'm not trying to poo-poo on anybody's parade because LaRock has done a phenomenal job. Women's college basketball, especially in Las Vegas, will never rise to the level of rock star. And the person who wrote that article is foolish. I will also talk a little bit about the UNLV men's program right now, which is struggling. They're below 500. And somebody wrote an article from the Las Vegas Sun, who covers the UNLV men's team. And in that article wrote about the San Diego State game. San Diego State proved that they're for real after beating UNLV. What a ridiculous headline. First of all, San Diego State is always competing for a Mountain West Conference title. And if they're not winning the title, they're in the finals. And they made it to the finals of the NCAA tournament last year. And a guy from the Las Vegas Sun says that San Diego State proved that they're for real because they beat an average to below average UNLV team at home. It's just embarrassing what some of these people write. With that being said, the UNLV men's basketball team is playing tonight against Rick Pitino Jr. and the New Mexico Lobos. I've watched New Mexico play in person. They were in a tournament here in Las Vegas earlier this year. I can tell you the team is for real. They're very good. They arguably have the best player in the Mountain West Conference in Jamal Mashburn Jr. Yes, he's the son of his father, Jamal Mashburn, who's a Hall of Famer. Jamal Mashburn Jr. can score just about anywhere on the court. He's a prolific scorer, and he's a fun player to watch when he's healthy. Rick Pitino Jr. has done a really good job with this New Mexico team. He really has. I give him a lot of credit. This is a good basketball team with skill underneath the basket and good guard play. With that being said, I believe Jaylen Brown, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be out for the rest of the year. And
he tore his ACL.
Yeah. So
Saturday.
Jalen, did I say Jaylen Brown? I'm sorry, Jalen
Hill.
So Jalen Hill's a senior. He's a big body. He hasn't had a really good year thus far, but this is a loss for the team. Is it a huge loss? I'm not going to go that far, but it is a loss, and it's somebody that's very serviceable on the floor that can play. So this is a big deal, and in the grand aspect of where the team is going to be, because you need bodies. With that being said, I do believe this is a winnable game for UNLV. Do I think they're going to win this basketball game? I'm not sure. But this would be a big win for the team. They start off in the Mountain West Conference 0-1. It's a winnable game. I don't think that UNLV is going to win this game. My gut feeling tells me that New Mexico finds a way to win because they have the best player on the floor in Jamal Mashburn Jr., and I think their bigs are really good. In order for UNLV to win this game, the Boone brothers need to be very, very good. And guys need to make shots. They need to make threes, and they just didn't make enough shots at San Diego State. So going to be probably an entertaining game tonight, a fun game tonight. And we'll have to wait and see how this pans out. But I do believe, and I'm rooting for Kevin Kruger because I think he's a really good dude. I'm rooting for Kevin. Love his family. Love his father. Kevin needs to do something this year in Mountain West Conference play. And you can't be in the playing game of the Mountain West Conference tournament. I think you have to compete, be in the top 4, and that's going to be very difficult to do because the Mountain West Conference is really good this year. You know, it's funny. I was talking to former Rebel Chekna Dembele yesterday. I saw him over at Circa where he works, and we were talking a little bit about the Mountain West Conference, and we were talking a little bit about this team. And yeah, he agrees with me. The Mountain West Conference is really good this year. They haven't had a lot of credit lately since Kawhi Leonard and since Jimmer Fredette, but this conference, in my opinion, is the best it's been since that year. I can name you 4 or 5 teams that Colorado State's a top 25 team. I know they just lost a game the other day. But there are a lot of good teams in this conference that could make some noise in March. Colorado State obviously being one of them. San Diego State obviously being another one. And then I look at Utah State and the run that they've been on. I mean, and I'm not even mentioning some of these other teams, by the way. Colorado State, San Diego State, obviously Utah State. New Mexico is certainly in that mix. And then you go down the list, and San Jose State is, I mean, I like Coach Miles. Doesn't have a lot of talent, but he's a really good coach. Air Force, not good. Fresno State, not very good. Nevada is a team that I haven't talked about a lot on this show. They're really good. Alfred has done a really good job with Nevada Reno. So I just named you five teams at minimum that are absolutely better than UNLV. So this is an opportunity for UNLV to get a big win at home. Could have ramifications. I know it's very early, but could have ramifications in March for the tournament. Winnable game. My prediction: I think New Mexico finds a way to win this game, and I think Jamal Mashburn Jr. goes off. But if they can defend Jamal Mashburn and limit him, he's a really good player. Limit him, defend, and control the glass. I think UNLV certainly has a fighting chance to win this basketball game at home tonight. So look forward to joining all of you tomorrow. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the streams, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. And we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Have a great day, everybody.